at another event, and I thought, this is kind of timely, maybe a little maudlin, but music plays a big part in my life, and I'm posing a question, and that question is, which musician's death, which musician's passing affected you the most? Who were you like, oh my God, I can't believe this person died, Unfortunately, the music industry seems to take them young sometimes, and there were several that kind of came to my mind, but I wanted to pose it to our group, which is, what musicians passing really affected you? And you could type them in chat. You can just start talking, but I'm curious what you guys came up with that might be different than what we came up with. Some good ones coming in the chat. Chris Cornell, yeah, too young. I think for me, it was either David Bowie, or Prince. Like those were, and they happened like think within a year of each other. Oh, Whitney Houston for sure. Taylor Hawkins, I mean, he passed away recently. What were the other ones that well, let's see what people are putting in here. Some people say Amy Winehouse, that was a tragic one. Who else? Michael Jackson. I mean, controversies aside. Anybody else? I definitely think Whitney's passing was incredibly sad, especially because she had like so many like kind of ups and downs. What is it, the 27-year-old? Isn't that like the age where like some people's passing, when they're 27? I know Amy Winehouse was in that group. Kurt Cobain was in that group.
Yeah, I think even like Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin might have been there too.
Yeah.
Jason, yeah, there's definitely something with that age.
And this one is going back a bit, but I also think Otis Redding, I think he was like around that 27-year range too.
James Dean as well.
I was a big INXS fan, and Michael Hutchence. I mean, he committed suicide. Anybody else? Oh, this is a quiet group today. We're not usually so shy.
We're definitely not.
Okay, well, do we want to move on then to our first speaker? I saw that Jessica joined us.
Yes, absolutely.
There we go. Give me a quick second, and if somebody can make sure that she's a presenter, that'll be helpful. Jessica, are you able to hear us okay?
I am. Are you able to hear me okay?
Perfect.
All right, awesome.
There we go. So give me a quick second. I just want to say a few nice things about Jessica. It's not that hard to find them. But I would say is that, I've been fortunate to attend, a few Support World Live events and Service Management World conferences over the years. And I've had an opportunity to, hear some really great presenters who I would say get the real world implications of managing IT support in complex organizations. And Jessica is certainly one of those. Jessica Alfaro is certainly one of those presenters. And I'm really glad that I was able to arrange for Jessica to present at today's HDI Philly HDI chapter meeting. Jessica is currently the managing director at Acuity Technology Solutions, where she leads their cultural change that supports growth, across the entire corporate portfolio of services. In this role, she oversees development and expansion of Acuity's technical capabilities, their business partnerships and strategic initiatives. She promotes process improvements and continual improvement through establishing governance and training around the adoption of best practices such as Agile, IDLE, DevOps, and CMMI. You're in Virginia, right? Northern Virginia?
Yep.
Yep. So based in Northern Virginia, I'm glad that we were able to arrange. This is a presentation that I've seen her present before, which is actually why I wanted to make sure that that we were able to get her, because it's a pretty timely topic, around improving our own support organizations. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica.
All right, great. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me. And so I know that you saw, I've made a few tweaks to this presentation because it was a little bit since the last time that I delivered it. So I was like, let me see if I can add a little something to it. So just let me know if you can see my screen okay.
Got it.
If I full screen this, will I lose view of you guys? Oh, no, good, perfect. All right, so yep, we're going to talk about Agile, and this is really more a use case conversation just on what Acuity has done in regards to continual improvement and growth. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about, Jason mentioned that, we've grown as a company. There's a lot of changes that we needed to make. And so establishing a new organization and all of that. So there's a lot of pieces that pulled this together. And so that's what I'm going to get into. So I won't really go much more about me since Jason already kind of covered that. I think maybe the only thing that I would add, so I live in Winchester, Virginia. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Winchester. It's a beautiful place. So if you ever get around the Shenandoah, definitely check it out. I think we were established in like 1776. So there's a lot of history here. Definitely like Civil War history and all of that. So it's a great place to be. And then I'm just curious what you hope to take out of this session. So if there are things that when you read the abstract or just, what drew you into it. So if you want to throw some thoughts in the chat, I'd love to just see what you're hoping to get out of this today. All right, so, another thing too, because a part of the, this whole conversation, there's a lot of best practices that are out there. And I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with ITIL 4, but maybe not. Some may know Agile from a conceptual perspective, but maybe haven't been part of Agile teams and really, getting into the nuts and bolts of it. And then even CMMI as well. So curious as well, if you want to throw in the chat just your knowledge of these areas. You can kind of see the graphic here of it's either completely brand new to you, and so that will help in just kind of gauging how much detail I can go into some of this, or if it's all of you guys are SMEs and you just know it, I can cover it at a very high level, but definitely interested in seeing where you fit on the scale. So for me particularly, so I am ITIL 4 managing professional and strategic leader. So I'm hoping to be able to get the master one day. I feel like it's attainable. I've seen a few folks actually go after it. So I'm curious, where folks are from that perspective. I feel like I was really happy to see some of the changes that came out in ITIL 4. And then from, an Agile perspective, myself, I've managed Agile teams. I don't do Agile coaching per se, but I do have a team of individuals that do Agile coaching. So just making sure they have the tools and things that are needed in order to, get the highest performance from our teams. And then from a CMMI perspective, I am a CMMI associate. Basically, I'm in charge of the CMMI appraisals for Acuity. So there's a lot that's involved with that. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about why are we talking about these processes and how does that kind of fit into the topic that we're talking about in regards to continual improvement. So we'll get into some of those details.
Jess, we've certainly seen idle and agile, certainly a lot of idle, some agile on the service desk. I haven't heard too much CMMI as it relates to the delivery of support services. Are you seeing that more now?
So I would say that, it's really in the federal space. So I guess what I should caveat is that a lot of the work that Acuity does is federal government work. And so a lot of the contracts that we go after, those are one of the requirements. It shows our company has a level of maturity in our delivery of or development of products, but then also in delivering of services. So there are two components to CMMI. One is a development perspective, and then the other is from a services perspective. So we have to do it just from a federal contracting perspective. I don't have that background as far as on the private side. I know there's there's a wide range of individuals on this call. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and please, like, I do want this to be interactive. So if you guys have a question or want to chime in on something, feel free. You can either raise your hand so I can see it pop up, but definitely want this to be as interactive as possible. All right, so some common organizational challenges. So we're having this conversation because there's a lot going on in our organizations, so there's great things that are happening, and then there's always areas for improvement and organizational challenges that we're running into. So when we look at just the wide range, you can see some examples here of we're not meeting deadlines on time, we're not getting the support that we need, the cost of delivery continues to go up and we're not managing that as well, the disruption. So there's a lot of factors that come into play in our organizations, and we have to think about them. We have to talk about how do we measure what is the right level of performance, and then what type of improvements that we need to put in place to try to fix some of these issues that we're seeing. So, great conversations. I'm curious, are there others, I'm polling the group here that you would like to highlight as an organizational challenge that you would like to address?
One thing you might add to the mix is, that work from home. Like, once we've gone to working from home, it's hard to get people to come back in. I think that's a common thread for several people on listening in. That's
absolutely, yeah. And we're in this presentation I put together before the pandemic. So yeah, that's a perfect one. And that's one that we're actually dealing with as well, where, our CEO wants us to come back into the office, but we've proven that we can work effectively virtually. And so, but then there's also some things that you miss when you're not in person and you're not able to collaborate and all that. So yeah, definitely looking at some of those, that is an important thing to consider. All right, so, kind of pulling on this thread a little bit of, just some of the challenges that our organizations are dealing with. And so this was actually pulled from the CMMI Institute, just focusing on the fact that many organizations don't have these standard processes and job aids and things in place to really help their workforce in performing the work that they do. You bring junior resources in, and they may not know some of the rigor that we have in place or best practices that we have in place. And so they're kind of starting from scratch, or there isn't something that they can reference that gives them a starting point. We're not planning enough. We're not, encouraging our employees to really build some of those organizational capabilities, putting the monitoring in place to be able to measure the performance and all of that, or we're just not measuring the right things. And so these are all, so they're problems, but then there's also the solution behind that in thinking about these things. And I know that a lot of times we consider it overhead. We got to create documentation, we got to keep it updating, and we got to train it, we got to, and there is a lot of overhead with that, but then at the same time, you're providing those repeatable assets and so forth and making that available to your organization. And so this was something that really resonated for me, that was something that is happening in my organization. So, I mentioned that we're growing exponentially. So right before the pandemic hit, we were at about 150, people in the company. And then we won a contract that just exploded, and we doubled in size. And it was right before the pandemic. So we onboarded like over 100 people, and it was, and none of them like knew each other. So it was a huge challenge that we ran into. And so this really jumped out at us as we didn't have standardized onboarding processes. It was kind of ad hoc depending on which team or group they were actually getting onboarded to. When it came to, well, what do we do as a company, and being able to socialize that to these new employees. So we found that this was a problem and we needed to really fix it. And so we made a strategic decision to build a new organization in the company that would focus on our capabilities and developing those process assets and things that we can put that quality and rigor back into some standardized way that we could train and educate our workforce. And so this is just an example of I mean, this is our operational model. And so I kind of just talk a little bit about, so where I fit in our technology solutions group, and then also this concept of the performance office. And we're going to kind of maybe more focus on the performance office itself. But as we found ourselves in this unique situation of growth, and especially in the federal contracting world, we are no longer a small business, and we have to compete with the Deloittes and Accentures and these big, large IT companies that have a lot of this established. They have their capabilities established. They have these process assets established. They got good training. And so this was an area that we knew we had to focus on in order for us to be able to compete with these large companies, because, in this federal contracting world, we could no longer go after small business work, and we had to do full and open work. And so it required that rigor to, establish some type of rigor in place to get us there. So our TSGs really focused on the technology. So how do we get we do cloud, we do, AI, ML, we're doing security, we're doing these things. So making sure that that's available and that our workforce knows about it, how we're able to pull people in through these communities of interest, providing the training and coaching. So definitely a lot of things from the technical perspective, to bring that together. And then from the performance side, those standards and best practices, playbooks, being able to do some type of evaluation and then continual improvement of that. So building that culture of continual improvement. And so for us, our customers are the company. So we were focused on, let's build a model that we're able to provide a service to the company by being able to look at strategic initiatives, support any type of client meetings, do fun tech challenges and learning programs. So this was what we put in place, and just doing that proactive outreach with our workforce, and then really looking at, so I've got this Venn diagram of, just our technical capabilities. We've got some partnerships that we've established, and then these corporate certifications or best practices that drive that value to our customers. And so, the performance office, our performance office really focuses on, so the ISO certifications, ISO 9000, 20000, 27000, our CMMI, and then we're also looking at CMMMC, which is the cybersecurity maturity model certification. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that, but again, it's just a set of best practices around cyber health. So trying to kind of centralize these mandates and requirements as an organization, and then how do we put that and make that available in some type of organizational process model that we can educate our workforce. And so these are kind of these key tenets of our performance offices, rounding out what those certifications are, best practices, and then the governance and standards around that. So making sure we've got the training, we've got those assets in place, and we're able to educate the workforce on that. The performance side of it, so we definitely want to measure what we're doing. We've got various different just across our capabilities when we're managing cloud environments, or we have a portfolio of IT modernization efforts. Like, what is it that we actually want to measure? And so being able to put that in place and focusing on benchmarking what our current processes are, and then how do we see how well we're doing and implementing corrective actions and that continual improvement. And then the fourth and fifth are really focused more on the customer experience. So definitely want to make sure that we're providing the right resources to provide service excellence. So providing reach back support, being able to talk about process improvement and process automation. So working directly with our teams that are delivering solutions for our clients. So having that reach back support. And then also, how do I know my customer's happy with the service that we're offering, and building that with them? So that value co-creation, working directly with them. So making sure that we have good relationships and that we're building those relationships. So these are all things that we felt were really important for us to train the workforce and make sure that we have a repeatable way that is measured, and that we're focused on always trying to do things better. So, just from the organizational process model. So this is a graphic that came out of CMMI. And so I'll get into a little bit of why CMMI and all of that. But what I like about this is you'll see the area of disparate processes. This is kind of what we're doing today, right? There's pockets of excellence. Folks are doing things a certain way, and it's okay, but it's not standardized. It's not shared across other teams. And so we know that that's there. And then we also have these set of industry best practices. And I think what I've found often when we're talking about Agile, or we're talking about ITIL, or human-centered design, or the software development lifecycle, these are all best practices that are out there, and one doesn't really cancel out the other. They have their own distinct purpose and use. And so making sure that we educate folks in our workforce of why would I use Agile versus SDLC, or why would I use DevOps or human-centered design, or do they fit together? And so being able to provide some of those guidelines of here's what's out there from an industry perspective, and then how do you couple that with the processes that our workforce is actually using today, or any specific requirements that our clients may have. And then we also had to consider some of these industry requirements. So I mentioned that, you know, my company has ISO 9000, 27000, 20000. And so we have to consider these industry requirements, because we're actually getting audited on a yearly basis, on a, you know, every 3 years from a CMMI perspective. I got to show that we're, you know, eating our own dog food, that we are, you know, following this, that, you know, it's trickled down to our workforce and to our delivery teams, and actually being able to show evidence of that. And so what we looked at is bringing all of these different puzzle pieces together and coming up with a process model that incorporates all of this through various process assets and playbooks and things like that to standardize the way that we work. So, you know, Jason asked the question, you know, why CMMI? And so I think really, and you know, and I'm curious what, you know, the audience, most folks will think of CMMI as just a maturity model. It's a, you know, it tells me, you know, level 1, I'm kind of doing things ad hoc, where like a level 3 of actually taking some organizational, so that's, you know, so we're a level 3 organization, which means that there is some organizational guidance being provided to the workforce on how you work, versus level 1 being, well, I'm just kind of doing things ad hoc, and, you know, there is no real standardization. Where a level 5 is you're driving business decisions based on measurements and proven value that you're delivering for your clients and your organization. So I love CMMI from that perspective. Once you really get into it, and as I said, there's different domain areas of focus within CMMI. So if you're doing development, software development work, or developing of products and services, then, you know, there is a set of practices that you would follow, and it gives you certain guidelines on what a level 3 maturity organization would do, which really is more of the measurement side of things. It's making sure that you're thinking about what you're measuring, and then starting to make business decisions based on those measurements. So, you know, and then on the services side, so there is a CMMI services that's focused specifically on maturity of delivery of services. So help desk or any type of service catalog, and that, you know, what you actually, you know, the fulfillment of those services to your customer and how you measure that. So it's definitely worth looking into. I would say there's a lot of great resources out there. But for me, the biggest puzzle pieces are the capabilities. So it focuses on what are those skills and knowledge, technology, infrastructure, all of that you want in your organization. So how, you know, what is it that you do, and what are the capabilities that you're offering, and how do you continue to build those capabilities, and how does everyone else know what your capabilities are? So for me, the capabilities aligns with our technology solutions group. So this was, you know, we said, okay, we're a technology company. There's certain things we want to be known for as a company. So how do I define that? And how do I make that known to the workforce? And then how do I build training and knowledge programs to build those capabilities? Because for us, the capabilities are in our people. So we want to make sure that our people have the skills in order to deliver. And then the other side of the coin, so in our operational model, if you remember, was the TSG, so our Technology Solutions Group, and our performance office. So the other piece of this, so business performance. So, a lot of organizations may have like a quality office or something that really focuses on, probably the basics of like, just ISO quality and that type of thing. But we wanted to take it a step further, and it's more than just quality. It's performance. Quality I felt like was limiting, and we're only really focusing on one aspect of a larger piece that we're trying to build. And so the performance side of it, of looking at the quality, cost, speed, accuracy, and just what is it that we want to measure? Like, we want to measure things that are actually going to provide value. And so that's where I feel like these pieces of what CMMI offer, and being able to look at it from this perspective. And we want to increase customer satisfaction. We want to be able to deliver, and I want my customers to come back. And so that's ultimately what I want them to be happy with what we offer, and that they know that we're a company that's going to provide the value that they're looking for. And then, I mentioned, so we talked, about all these best practices, and, obviously, ITIL, I've been doing this for almost 20 years in the ITIL space. So ITIL will always be in my toolkit of best practices. And just, I think I love this graphic from the perspective of the scope of what ITIL looks at. So, I think most people, if they think of ITIL, they're just like, oh, well, that's just service management, or that's just help desk, or that's just, they look at it from a very limited perspective. But what I really enjoyed about the ITIL 4 Strategic Leader course that I took was this focus on the business. And that if you look at your business from the, so this is the 4 dimensions of service management, with your organizations and people, the information and technology, your partners and suppliers, and then these value streams and processes. This is your organizational makeup. So every business decision that you're making, you're looking at all of these factors and all of these external factors that are outlined on the outside of this in business decisions, right? So you provide a set of products and services. You want to be able to deliver value to your customers. When you're thinking about continual improvement, who are my people? What do they offer? How do I get them the skills and capabilities that they need? From a technology perspective, there's a lot of data that's out there. There's a lot of systems that we use. How do we centralize that in a way where people know where to go when there's a certain business process or, thing that they have to consider? So it's really kind of bringing all that together and helping your organization understand, here are those key components that offer or enable our service delivery. The partners and suppliers, is definitely a huge piece. I know in our organization, we can't do things by ourselves. We've got partnerships that, with other industry partners, we've got our technology partners, we've got, the client, our federal partners. So, bringing that together and making sure that we have good processes in place for how we engage with our partners. How do we continue to nurture that? It's a lot of work. I know that from the technology partnership side, there's some expectations from our technology partners that we're following certain best practices. And so all of these things we have to consider always trying to do better. And you know, so if we know what it is, then we can always continually improve on our processes around that. And so, you know, that's in that last box there of the value streams and processes and how they touch all of these areas, and ensuring that we're considering that. And again, you know, measuring what is that right measurement that we want to put in place, and how do we, you know, always continually improve on that. I won't go into too much detail here. You know, again, you know, I'm a fan of, you know, the ITIL service value system. You know, I think it's a great perspective to look at all of the services that we offer, and just looking at the demand and these opportunities that come in, and then how we use these areas to really drive value. You know, so I look at like the guiding principles is a lot of what we've been talking about as far as this organizational model that we put in place for Acuity, where we said, okay, we've got some industry requirements that we have to meet. We've got these best practices in place. Now we need to be able to provide these guiding principles and guidelines to the organization to make sure that they know where to find this, that they know where we stand as a company with, you know, our customer engagement. You know, governance is definitely a huge piece of that. And I know that, you know, many organizations may struggle with governance and thinking that it's like this heavy overhead that you need to put on things, but you want to consider what some of the guardrails are, making sure that you're properly documenting, you know, any type of approvals and those that are making decisions, and just, you know, having that available, you know, to the organization. You know, your practices, you know, obviously there's many different practices, and just in ITIL alone, there's the 34 practices, which get into a lot of detail. But, you know, that's the engine that drives continual improvement. And so you know, I love this graphic. And then also when you see the you know, pull out of that in the service value chain, where it gets into planning and improving. So it's embedded throughout all of these things. So from a CMMI perspective, CMMI is really looking at maturity and continual improvement of how you continue to mature your organization. And then from an ITIL perspective, we're getting more into the nuts and bolts of the actual service delivery and those processes that enable that, and continuing, you know, having that continual improvement culture built into that as well. And so Agile really is just a way to kind of compartmentalize how you're doing things. So the reason why I called this presentation using Agile to support continual improvement was you got to start small. You know, so there's so many things that we could try to boil the ocean and we just can't, right? So I like Agile in that you're taking small chunks and you're making small improvements and iterations as you go. So I don't look at Agile as just a software development lifecycle, although yes, that's what it's mainly used for, but I can come up with improvement ideas in my organization, you know, that drive that vision, and I can have a backlog, and I can, you know, plan, okay, these 2 things I'm going to try to implement within the next couple weeks, and you're talking about it as a team, and you're, you know, following the ceremonies that are part of, you know, an Agile Scrum lifecycle, where, you know, you've got sprint reviews, you've got the retrospectives, you know, you're looking and grooming your backlog. And so these are all things that you can do with any type of work that you do. I think the real takeaway here is that you're segmenting your work in a way that's a little bit more manageable, where you're not trying to take on too many things at one time, and you can continually. So what we tried to do was we have an improvement log in our, so as part of our CMMI and ISO processes, where we have to take, feedback from our workforce and our customers. And so we kind of keep that backlog open, and we're like, if there's an improvement idea, please throw it in the backlog. And then we have a cadence where we're constantly talking about, okay, so we probably need to make some improvements to our recruiting process. We found a challenge with, finding the right talent, trying to scrape resumes and all of that. So, okay, let's put that in an improvement and let's figure out a way to make that better. Maybe there's a way we can automate it or something like that. So we created this backlog, and it's just been a great way for us to, and it's open to anyone. Anyone in the organization can submit an improvement idea, and we will talk about it so we don't actually follow like a daily cadence where, I know like in a normal Agile Scrum life cycle, they've got daily Scrum meetings and they're, talking about it for 15 minutes every day. We kind of spread that out a little bit more where, we're talking about it every month at least, so it's a start. So a lot of our workforce is buried in delivering solutions and helping our clients. And so pulling them out to focus on this has been, it's difficult. So we try to figure out a way, okay, let's at least have a monthly meetup where we review what's in the backlog, and then we identify those couple things that we think we can make some improvements on, and then we just continue that. So by the end of the year, you've implemented some things. There are some things that are actually, we were able to show some progress that we're making. And so I've found this to be a really great approach. And so you'll see, I also align this to the continual improvement life cycle and ITIL. So, what's the vision? Where are we now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? Et cetera, et cetera. But how do we keep the momentum going? And so that was really the key for me was, if I can come up with some type of way that it doesn't feel overwhelming and we can continue that momentum, this was a great way to do it. And then, this is, I think the big thing here was just the visibility of it. So making sure that the work that we were doing, if somebody wanted to see, well, I submitted this idea, but I don't know what they're doing with this. So just having that visibility of the work and that focus, that was really the key was, that transparency. So, if you can have a Kanban, you're tracking some of these tasks and work products, making those assignments and just providing that transparency. I think that was the biggest key to adoption, and making sure that our folks knew that we were listening and that we're actively working to improve the organization as we go. I think one of the challenges that we ran into is, getting folks to actually document some of the things. I don't know if any of you have ever had challenges with just, adopting any new type of task management. It's sometimes it works well and sometimes it doesn't. And so it took a few iterations to kind of figure out, okay, what tool or where can we kind of provide this visibility and tracking of the product backlog and all of that. And so it took a few iterations, but I think continuing to put the visibility of it to our company, that was the key. And so I think you just have to keep working at it, and hopefully you gain that adoption and use of some type of task management.
Jessica, I actually have some experience in using Kanban and, you know, those visual boards. And we kind of lost that momentum when we started working from home.
Okay.
You know, have you figured out like how you can incorporate this with a dispersed remote workforce? You know, because there's just I think some of the benefits of Kanban is just that like it's in your face, right? You see it in a conference room, you see it in the lunchroom, you see it on a, you know, in your workspace so that you're reminded of it, you know, and then when it becomes like out of sight, out of mind, you know, we kind of lost some momentum.
Yeah, and so again, that was the key for us, was to keep reminding people that it was there. And so, you know, again, we tried various different things. Like I know we at one point had like a SharePoint list, and we would just kind of try to bring that up as much as we could. We tried to use Planner at one point. I think we even tried to use Jira at one point. And so, yeah, it took a few iterations to actually see what was working and what was, you know, how people were actually using it. And then at the end, we opted for, so we have an Microsoft 365 environment. So we're on Teams, we've got like different teams set up. And so we've set up Kanbans in there. And as we have meetings and so forth, I just bring it up. And I'm like, okay. And so we're talking, and we've got somebody that's starting to track the tasks. And so it just became, okay, we have to do this because, and it was really a leadership thing. It was, I needed my leadership to really buy into it, because without their support, everyone was like, well, why do I have to do this? I don't, you know, leadership doesn't really want it or doesn't care about it.
Hey, Paul, I see you have your hand raised.
So I just wanted to just bring this out because it's a comment to your comment. I mean, we actually have Scrum meetings and stuff that are separate from the help desk meetings. So that's how we were able to keep doing this with Kanban boards with some of our projects. I mean, we're a little more than a typical help desk because we have programmers and some other people doing some things. But I mean, we did this. We actually had a separate Scrum meeting like once a week where we go over the projects. Then we would have stand-ups in the morning, like quick if we needed them, like not necessarily every morning. So that's how we kept it in front, is by actually scheduling a Scrum meeting once a week to go over some of the projects. So I think that's how you keep it in front of everybody, is to put it on a calendar item and actually put it in front of people and go through with a Scrum Master. So just a thought.
No, absolutely. That's the key. Thanks, Paul.
Anytime.
All right, so, you know, again, I definitely want, you know, this to be interactive. I'm curious, just based on what you've heard, and are there a couple of improvement opportunities? Like if anyone wants to share, like what's one improvement opportunity that you think is critical for your organization that you would like to share? Yeah, Paul.
All right, I'm all sharing. So, so what we did, we've used ticketing solution. We have Remedy still, and we've had it for a long time. And what ended up happening, we're at a university. So, at a university, those of you that work there all know this. We really can't mandate anything. We kind of have to like lead by example type of thing. So we just were constant with that. And as the university became more metrics driven per units, people came to us and they actually wanted the ticketing solution. And we just made sure that when we trained them and set them up and did everything, we made sure we were very solid and followed up and everything like that. And actually doing that helped the organization because we got all these areas on the ticketing solution, our financial aid, our housing and whatnot. So when people would call the help desk, we could actually route tickets and follow up with stuff where if they went back and forth, it was helpful to have everybody on the same platform. And then what ended up happening was we replaced our call center literally a month before COVID at the help desk. So we went on a cloud-based solution. We went on Genesis Pure Cloud, and we were able to do some integrations with the ticketing system where it'll pop. We'll do screen pops and stuff, and creating tickets and stuff. And the other areas that we're using our ticketing solution saw they had a need for the phone system too, especially during COVID. And we were able to actually onboard them during COVID and give them some of the integrations that we did with the ticketing solution and with our chatbot and stuff. And with more areas coming on board, it just created a better experience for the students and faculty and our customers in general. So, that was a way of, and then following that kind of software model, since we were using like a Scrum thing, we would have these like little sprints and all, like how we would bring people on and what phases and training and stuff like that. So we're able to use the Agile methodology to bring these people on and have them use our business practices, which ended up helping the organization because then everybody was working by the same rules and using the same tools. So that was a very successful initiative, and we're continuing to do that now.
Yeah, that's exactly what, that's what we needed. That's kind of the point I've been trying to make too, and this is that the standardization, it helps. And I think being able to identify, okay, here's the technology that we're going to use, here's why we're going to use it, here are the processes that help support that, and then making sure that everyone is on the same page. It seems simple, but sometimes it's easier said than done. So I know that it just takes, that continual adoption, just continuing to bring it up and say, hey, this is why we're doing it this way, and the what's in it for them. Because I think ultimately, especially when we have, there's just certain individuals like, well, why do I have to do this? It's either extra work or, so always kind of pointing back to the what's in it, what's in it for them, but then what's in it for the organization as a whole. So, those have always been, things I have to consider in those scenarios. Any other improvement ideas that William?
Sheila is Sheila. Hi.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Jessica. That's okay.
Hi.
Sheila Williams. That's fine. Similar to Paul, I work for F&C Corporation, and about 5.5 years ago, we outsourced our service desk. It was internal, and although it was hard for the internal people to get used to your colleagues leaving, having our service desks in various countries, I trained, although I did visit, we're in Bangalore, Buenos Aires, and at the time, Denmark, and we have English, Portuguese, and Spanish. I visited Bangalore, but I did most of the training here. So it allowed us to, we could start up in another country and service 8,000 employees and provide the support by having processes, the SOPs in place. We use Teams a lot for a lot of the process improvements. And we, meaning the service desk, we've driven a lot of the change in our organization, getting systems in place, because in the first slide, it said 50% of organizations don't have it. And, a lot of things are sent to the service desk. I don't want to say dumped on the service desk, but we've done a good job of making sure we don't take on any tasks or roles without those SOPs, without an SLA attached. And it has really helped the organization. I've been with FMC 32 years. It went from a little chaotic, everyone throwing everything over the fence to the service desk, anything they wanted with it first, to now, no, we're not subject matter experts. We're like your triage, but we also do some resolution. We have 3 different phases: in scope, assist, and then things we may just take a ticket and pass on. But you have to clearly identify that. So, like Paul, we made a lot of improvements. So when COVID hit, the only difference, I didn't have computers for all of our FMC computers. The organization that we outsourced to had some of theirs, but initially they didn't want to take on that responsibility. But now they all have FMC, so everything is driven the way our organization does things, security, and it really, really works well. We did not have any downtime. It was like it never happened. People just had to get used to working from home. But, it was more re-encouraging the agents that you can do this and their leads to encourage their people. But from a technology standpoint, there were no limitations.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, from a measurement perspective, does anyone, and you mentioned SLAs, and it just made me think of, so we had a scenario in one of our contracts where, we had some measurements set up. It was something that, the government asked us for. They were saying, here are a set of measurements that, we'd like for you to look at. And they really weren't providing a whole lot of value. Like, we just kept exceeding. And we never really talked about, okay, well, how do we make this a little bit more meaningful? And so I'm curious if anyone has had like examples where, they, are constantly tweaking their metrics based on, as they do improve their throughput and service delivery, that they're constantly making those changes to what they're measuring. Yes, no, maybe. But if anything, it's a good practice. I mean, so we definitely found that that was an important thing to do. And, it worked out great. We were able to bring some new ideas to the table. And now it's a more meaningful conversation with our client because it's something that we're constantly revisiting is just what we're measuring. Paul.
I keep not wanting to keep sharing, but I guess I'll keep talking. So one of the things that we did, we used to, if those of you, again, with schools, we have student workers, and the student workers would help us out, like the full-timers a little bit. They're essentially students that are hired like grants or scholarships and whatnot to help us out. And we would have them do limited things. And what ended up happening was, once we went to the Genesis platform, one of the things that the students used to do is just pull calls, and we would just do a callbacks model because we just couldn't keep up with everything with all the paperwork and whatnot. And once we went to Genesis and we were able to programmatically do some things and have that do some fulfillment and whatnot, we were able to start taking more live calls. And when we started looking at the metrics, our satisfaction went up, and we also realized that we didn't need the students to do such lower level things. We didn't need like clerical students. We needed more technical students. So we actually use these numbers to change the type of students we hire. We stopped hiring clerical students. We started hiring more technical students, and we made a business case to get them further access. So they are at a point now where they can almost do what the full-timers can do. So we just use our metrics and just change the business practices based on this stuff and just change our technologies and then solve that. And through all that, we were able to make some decisions to change how we staff. And I mean, we hover at between 97 and 100% customer satisfaction like every week. So that's what we've seen just by making changes based on things that we saw in our technologies.
Perfect. Those are great examples. Yeah, I appreciate everyone sharing. Let's see.
Paul's not shy. We found that out.
Well, that's great. Well, this is what I was hoping to get some of the real world examples, because I know that this is more, so my organization, is a different type of service delivery that we provide. It's consulting services that we provide. So, through contracts with the federal government. So it's definitely a different type of work, but some of the work that we deliver to our clients is more service-based focus. We don't necessarily manage help desks per se, but we do come in from a continual improvement perspective and look at what the help desk is doing, figure out better ways to, revisit some of the business processes and the measurements and throughput and all of those type of things, and even the tooling. So we've come in and done a lot of consulting around Remedy, ServiceNow, and just how do we, move folks off of some of the older legacy into, these newer SaaS platforms. So that's a little bit of some of what we do. So definitely interested in hearing some of more of the, examples that you guys have. But yeah, so, I think the roadmap to continual improvement is definitely something that, I know the ITIL version has kind of I thought of it as more of like a hamster wheel is really what, it's like. And I was like, I honestly don't feel like that's a real, like, I guess, image that I would like to portray when it comes to continual improvement, because we're not going in a circle, through a hamster wheel and not going anywhere. Like if you're in a hamster wheel, you're just going real fast, but you're not really going anywhere. So I opted more for this kind of journey view of continual improvement, in that, we're working towards, this never ending, continual improvement doesn't end. We're always trying to find ways to make ourselves better and keep our customers happy. And not only from, the delivery perspective, but even then ourselves individually, right? Like we want to make sure that we're constantly keeping our skills, updated and fresh and all of that. So I looked at this as more of a journey, and that we want to keep that momentum going. We want to continue to explore new places. And so that, I love the tagline here of, excellence is not a destination, but it's that continuous journey that never ends. I love to travel. I love to go see places all around the world. And so how do I continue that? And so that's really the attitude that we want to take when we think about continual improvement in our organizations, is what's that North Star that we're going after? And then, all right, now let's start planning how we get there. And so these are just practical steps that really help you think about, that journey that you need to take. So I'm a huge fan of, the continual improvement model, just not so much from the hamster wheel perspective that ITIL kind of puts in their documentation, but, more of this roadmap and journey to get to, that ultimate state that we want to get to in our organizations. And so, in line with that too, I think ITIL has some great guiding principles. And so I did notice in the chat that, some said that, ITIL was somewhat new for them. Definitely recommend the ITIL foundations. It's super easy. Well, I mean, maybe I won't say super easy, but I mean, it's a great starting point. What we've actually done in my organization is most new employees, we're kind of making that, if you don't have ITIL foundations, we want you to get it. And it really just level sets some terminology. It level sets some expectations on here's how you think about your organization and what a service is, and just the pieces and parts that you need to consider as part of that service. And then these guiding principles, which I feel like, the guiding principles, although they may feel, maybe like self-explanatory or, but there's a lot behind them. So what I did was look at how they mapped up with the continual improvement life cycle. But definitely we want to focus on value. I think in anything that we do, it's what is the value, what is the outcome that we're looking to deliver for our customers. And so as you're designing new services or as you're delivering services, we want to make sure our workforce and we all know, again, what we're driving towards and what's ultimately going to provide that value to our customers. And so understanding that organizational vision, just taking action focused on that value, and then constantly, keeping the momentum going there. And then starting where you are, like, we don't need to start from scratch. Like, we've got great processes in place. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Let's look at what's there and let's continue to work towards building on that, because a lot of people put time and effort into that current state where you are today. We're not trying to alienate folks and be like, well, that's just not working and we're just going to completely scrap it. It's all right, how do we continue to refine this and focus on that? And then, you know, as we've been talking about from an Agile perspective, you know, just progressing iteratively, you know, so take it small, start small, you know, just think of these ideas and make them visible. So we definitely want to, you know, so that kind of goes into the collaborate, promote visibility, which we talked a little bit about the Kanban board, and just making the ideas visible to the organization so they know what you're driving towards, and then constantly getting that feedback. But then the collaboration with, you know, like, I'm not going to go in a vacuum and go create some new process and not think about the people that I'm impacting. So we definitely want to think about who are the users that we're impacting, who are those stakeholders, and making sure that we're collaborating with them and you know, providing that visibility so they can see that things are happening and they'll get excited. And that's really where the adoption comes in. The thinking and working holistically. So I've always thought about that in the perspective of the ITIL 4, you know, the 4 dimensions of service management, where we looked at the organizations and people, the technology and the information, you know, our partners and suppliers, and those processes and value streams, and just all of those external factors that can you know, influence or impact any of these areas. And so we don't want to think just only on one thing. We kind of want to look at that big picture, and how do you consider all of those, you know, factors, the training, you know, the any type of governance around tooling and use. So these are all, it's again important to look at the big picture. And then let's just keep it simple. So you know, that one is, again, you know, it sounds easy, but definitely don't want to boil the ocean. So, you know, just trying not to overthink things, just start somewhere. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, especially from a data perspective, I know sometimes we get caught up on, well, the data is not good enough, and, you know, I need to clean the data before I can make it available to people. And it's, well, you know, just put it out there and get some feedback and continue to refine it. And then, you know, the optimization and automating. I mean, there's just so many tools out there, and we definitely want to leverage the automation that's available. If there are ways to, if there are things that are repeatable that don't require a human to be involved, and we can let our people focus more on our customer experience and that interaction with our customer, that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to open the, because you know, a lot of folks could be stretched thin. And so it's best to kind of let the easy stuff, let the tools do it, because the capabilities are there. So it's just standardizing that and getting that automated in a tool. And then again, your folks can focus on what's really important in the organization. And so, yeah, so for me here was just some key takeaways. You know, again, I know we kind of talked about quite a few things, you know, at Acuity and just our growth. We had to kind of look at, okay, what is it that we want to be known for as a company? So focus on those capabilities, and then really putting some performance measurements around that. So how do we evaluate ourselves and continue to build on these capabilities, because things continue to evolve. We can't stay stagnant. You know, the technology continues to evolve, and so we just need to be on top of that. And so always making sure that that's at the forefront, and you know, we just always want to try to do better. So I feel like the measurement and evaluating the performance and just really focusing on what is important for your organization. You know, I've used the what's the term with the, I'm like literally drawing a blank. It's a measurement. I know Google uses it. It's objective key results. Sorry, I had a you know, forgot that. But yeah, so we took the objective key results methodology of kind of looking at, okay, here's my overarching organizational goals, and then how does that cascade down to our teams, and making sure that there's traceability back up to the organization so that we know that ultimately we're providing value for the organization. And then, you know, communicating results, you know, again, we talked about the adoption. And so I think communication is key. If we want the adoption, we got to get the word out there. We, you know, communicate as much as possible, and find other mediums of communication. So not just via email, or, you know, look at your, you know, your intranet site, or use social media, and use just various different ways to communicate. We have communities of interest, so we try to bring people in and try to communicate that way. We've got like lunch and learns where we try to communicate that way. So always finding new ways of communication and just providing that visibility of the improvements that are happening. You know, continual improvement definitely at all levels. So it's not just from a, you know, one project, or, you know, at the organizational level. It's at all levels, and even individually as we look to improve ourselves and what we offer, and you know, just personal development. You know, the tracking of things. So again, you know, finding what works for your organization. If you guys have, you know, a service management tool, or you using just a simple planner through MS Teams, just start tracking something. I feel like that is the starting point. So if we don't write it down, then I don't think it's ever going to happen. So start writing it down. Planning and using Agile methods. So again, you know, Agile is great because you're able to take small chunks, and it just that bringing the visibility. So if you have a cadence, if it's daily, if it's weekly, if it's monthly, come up with whatever that cadence works for your organization. But the key is that you're talking about it constantly, and that visibility of it, and just following those motions of, you know, looking at how you prioritize which item you're going to focus on. And then when you do deliver it, did it work? Did it not work? And just continuing that conversation. So Agile is a great way of doing that. And ultimately, this builds that continuous learning culture, that continuous improvement culture, which I feel like, you know, and one of the key premises of why I put this presentation together was a lot of my customers, I always hear them talk about, I want innovation. I want, you know, innovate. How can we be more innovative? And it's, well, I got to do the easy stuff well before I can really start thinking about being innovative and how we can change the way we work and use some of these new technologies and tools to, you know, continue to evolve and change and be innovative. But we got to do the easy stuff well. And so I feel like by being able to have this, you know, continual improvement culture, that's going to lead you into innovation, because now you're going to start to think about, okay, how can I do this differently? How can I start using technology to enable, you know, that automation? And so, and last is lead by example. So if we're not doing it and our people aren't seeing us doing it, then it's never going to take off. So we've got to be good champions and find those champions in our organization that got your back, and really just recognize those individuals. So, you know, if we provide that good example, then we're able to trickle that down within our organizations. And again, just, yeah, recognize those people that are leading by example, because that's really what's going to drive that adoption.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Jessica,
so
I really appreciate you being able to join us today. It's really apparent to me that that you're living the life, like you're actually doing this in your organization. And I was intrigued because I know that you're not a big company, a smaller organization, but you're still able to take these, techniques, approaches, methodologies, and apply them to your business and how you help your clients, and I'm sure you advise your clients on this as well.
yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jason, for having me. And if anyone is interested, follow me on LinkedIn. Try to get out and share information. I'm trying to do a little bit better with that just on my social media platform. So love to connect.
And hopefully we'll get to see each other again in person at a future HDI conference.
Awesome. Sounds
Okay.
great.
I
Well,
will
thanks,
buy the next
everybody.
one. I'll buy the next cold beverage. There we go. Thanks, Jess. Colleen, how long a break do we have?
We're going to go 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Awesome. I see that Andrew has our next speaker has joined us, so we're in good shape. Are we doing a sponsor spotlight between?
No.
Okay, so we'll go right into Andrew. Okay, everybody, see you in 10 minutes.
Thanks. Okay.
Colleen, if you are on, I can see you. Could you make Andrew the presenter?
Yep, I think he should be good. Let me stop sharing.
Perfect. Thank you.
There
Can
we
you hear
go.
me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Perfect. All right.
Andrew, are you still living in Kentucky?
I am Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Good. What's the weather like there today?
It's actually pretty nice out. It's not too hot, not too humid today, so it's a good day.
We're having a nice day in Philly too.
Excellent. I wish I could have been there when you guys meet in person next time.
I
I'm gonna have
know.
to swing by.
We're hoping that we'll be in person soon. We're looking forward to that.
Did anyone attend the HDI conference last week in Vegas?
Only a few, and nobody that's on the call right now. You know, I still think that companies are a little gun shy on conferences and stuff. So I didn't go, and I normally go. Colleen usually goes, and she didn't go. So although I did speak to a couple of people that did attend, and they said it was a good conference.
Good. Yeah, everyone I've heard remark on it was really excited about it.
Yep.
Is for you all, the company being hesitant to send you, is that still a health and safety thing, or is that we have too much work and not enough people?
No, I think it's a mix. You know, I think some people are like me personally, like I haven't flown since the pandemic started, right? You know, and in fact, we did book our family vacation. We're gonna go to Colorado and New Mexico in July. But
Oh, cool.
you know, I think some people are still you know, hesitant to travel, especially when you don't necessarily have to. Yeah, and I got your video on. I can see it's looking
Excellent.
good. So, Colleen, are we ready to start?
Yep, I think so. Hopefully we have everyone back. And Andrew, you should be able to start whenever, or share, I should say, whenever you're ready.
Very
Excellent.
good. So I will start. I have a couple nice things to say about Andrew. It's not hard to say some nice things about him. But first, like, I'm really glad that we were able to arrange for Andrew to speak with us this month at our Philly HDI meeting. Andrew has a lot of real world experience in service desks where he came up through the ranks at Western Kentucky University. In fact, if you remember last year, we had Kaylee Belda spoke at one of our chapter meetings on knowledge management. And she worked with Andrew for several years at WKU. Upon leaving the university, Andrew's focused his career on customer service and customer experience with HDI and its sister organization, ICMI. And most recently, he's a senior consultant with Avtex Solutions. When I first reached out to Andrew, it was around a presentation that he had done on customer surveys, but he has a new topic that I'm glad he's going to discuss with us, which is on self-service adoption. So Andrew's a real thought leader in service and support industries, where he's a frequent presenter, as well as he's authored over 24 articles that have appeared in various publications and industry websites. So with that, I will turn it over to Andrew.
Thank you so much. That was a great introduction. I appreciate that. Big expectations to me now. And of course, macOS is giving me a privacy warning. I'm sorry that I did not have that fully tested. Bear with me for just a second to get this taken care of. Okay, let's try now. All right, you should be able to see the slideshow. Can everyone see that okay?
Got it.
Fantastic. All right, so this is because I'm special, I'm important, and I don't know any better. why some
Nice touch
customers.
with the Philly skyline and the Ben Franklin Bridge. Thanks.
I tried to personalize it for you. I did make an effort. So this topic has been on my mind, and it's something that I see a lot in contact centers that I work with. So it's not just an IT problem, but I do remember kind of from my very first job in IT that driving self-service adoption has always been at the top of minds for leaders of support centers. And especially, it's kind of one of those things that even just to migrate contacts from going to individuals and being the passing by in the hallway and dropping in the office, even just migrating people to a different channel to call a service desk is kind of along similar lines in terms of why customers don't adopt that. And there have been times in my life that I've felt a little bit bad about myself, because it's like I'm doing all these things. I feel like I'm doing things right, and it seems like we're never getting past a certain level, a relatively small level of kind of market penetration, to borrow a marketing term there. We'll get maybe 5-10% or so. For specific use cases, maybe we can channel a lot more of one specific contact type or incident type to a service catalog or to a particular channel that we want to go to. But shifting our customers' behavior to go to the channels where we want them to be is always a struggle, and it's something that organizations of every size, and whether your goal is self-service adoption to shift left, whether it's getting away from having people, bombard you in the office and call a service desk, it's something that we all kind of have in common. And this is the same for companies with their external support and their contact centers as well. So I really like this topic. It's one that it touches a lot of different aspects of kind of our support strategy. So let's dive right in. Quick intro. I don't need to add much more to what you've already heard. But I will note that I'm no longer with Avtex, so I'm working independently as a contact center and customer experience consultant. And my favorite thing to do is to help companies serve their employees and their customers better. I have a wide variety of interests, from knowledge management to risk management and strategy in the contact center. And lately, I've been getting into conversational IVR and bot design, which has been kind of fun, kind of interesting. And that's one of the reasons that this has been on my mind lately. Getting people to interact with a machine as if it's not a machine is a challenge sometimes. I've been playing around recently with, what different prompts can I use to get a little bit more detail. And that's a conversational IVR is a whole different story, so I won't sidetrack us too far. But it does play into kind of the self-service adoption, because as we're going to talk about, something that's really critical is putting self-service and containment opportunities in your customer's path that they're already kind of going along. So I want to just kind of level set on things that I've seen people do to drive self-service adoption, or to drive the channel that we want our customers to go to. As I mentioned, all the way back from my very first job in IT, which is even before WKU, I remember that we were introducing this for the first time as a foreign concept to everyone at this company, that we're supposed to go to a portal to log a ticket or call a service desk. And in order to try to drive as much adoption as we could, our IT manager decided we are going to make it as easy as possible. It was nothing like what you would see in a service catalog at probably any of your organizations. It was literally go to this website. There's one box. You know, you're already logged in because single sign-on. You type out like a brief description of your problem, and it can, like, you could type in just help and click submit. And we definitely got a lot of tickets that were just like, it's broken. I'm sure you've all been there. And that's one of the reasons we have service catalog. But our goal was to make it just as easy as possible. There can't possibly be any excuse that someone wouldn't go through this process, right? And it, you know, ease wasn't the problem. We weren't getting the adoption we wanted. Some organizations I've heard of, you know, have tried to bribe people, tried to reward them with, you know, everything from pizza parties to, I remember even at WKU, we did this a little bit, but to reward our kind of frequent flyers through the service catalog, you know, we might send them some stress balls or personalized kind of like IT merch, just as a little touch to say thanks for trying this alternative channel. What a lot of companies try to do, though, is they also hide channels or make them difficult to access. So they, you know, bury their phone number. I'm working with a vendor right now on behalf of one of my clients that not a single person in that company has a direct phone number that's not in their email signatures. It's not, you really can't find it online. I have done some digging. They have hidden that channel very well. And, you know, just a little side note, but one of the things that's frustrating about it is that we're paying for a level of plan where we're supposed to have phone support. So I should be able to reach out and call. We're paying for that privilege, and it's very, very difficult to get that information. But that's a common tactic, and that can hurt the experience. And ultimately, once someone finds out that number, the entire office is going to know. So it's it can be hit or miss whether or not that's successful as well. And we can do focus groups, you know, to try to understand why customers like our self-service offerings or what the barriers are for them. But we're going to talk about something pretty important here in just a few minutes. But focus groups are not always useful. And I'm a VOC guy. I love voice of the customer. I love to do a focus group. I love to interview people. It's truly one of my favorite things. Customers or employees, you learn so much from that. But it also takes a very, I'll say, experienced and or talented person to kind of know what are the limitations, and also a lot of contextual understanding. What are the limitations of this data that I'm getting? Because focus groups will tell you that new Coke is a great thing. And where's new Coke now? So pretty sure that's actually now Coke Zero. So I guess that made a comeback. But it's not Coke. The original Coke is still around. And focus group said, you know, should go away. So we'll dive into that a little bit more here in a minute. And then there's also, you know, promotions. We have stress balls. We have customized pens, magnets, putting it up on, you know, stickering every surface that that we can put a sticker on. A lot of organizations are doing that. And even just, you know, walking customers through using these tools at every opportunity, which is a good practice. But does it translate to folks using those resources when we're not there to supervise them? Not always. You know, should we still do it? Absolutely. But does it really, you know, stick after just a couple of times? It's a long-term play there.
We bought mouse pads. We had mouse pads with, you know, the website and your self-service portal, and you know, when you started, you know, you got your laptop and you got a mouse and your official mouse pad. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
Yep. And sometimes new employees, sometimes that's your opportunity. Frankly, it's just a little bit of staff turnover. People don't have that prior experience of, well, this is how I used to do things. And that while maybe not our favorite thing just for our colleagues and our work atmosphere, in terms of, changing behavior and culture of an organization toward using these different channels, that can be impactful. And a lot of times new employees are really appreciative of asynchronous channels because they've got a lot going on as they're first getting started. So that's a good way to market and promote it too, I think. So there are obviously, we've always got some early adopters. We've got the techie people. We've got those who want to be friends with IT, and they'll adopt. They'll try new things. They're excited about it, but that's a relatively small part of most organizations. How do we get past that, and what are the barriers that keep us from getting there? That's really what I want to dive into today. And I hear vendors say this all the time, that like customers love to self-serve. And we also hear that, millennials hate to talk on the phone, and we're all about the text channels. And but what where I get confused though, is that even with these things, which I agree, customers, they do like to self-serve in many cases. There are many cases that I like to self-serve, but even as a millennial, technically, there are times where I go straight to the phone. Even, I probably have Googled something once, but I'm not spending, 30 minutes researching an issue. There's some times where I probably even skip that step. Why are so large a percentage of contacts still sticking in the voice channel? Now, your results may vary depending on your organization. This is just kind of what I'm used to seeing, is about 60% of our incidents or requests are still coming through voice channel. And I'm also kind of blending some contact center for other industries in there too. So, but that's typically what I see in channel mix. And then we'll have, 20 to 30% in chat, and then maybe like 5 to 10% in some other means. But why is this? If as demographics are changing, if customers love self-service, why are they still going to this channel that they, based on what we know and what we hear all the time, that they ought not be going to? Yes, I see a hand raised.
Had to unmute myself. Sorry about that, Andrew. Sheila, again, FMC Corporation. Now this is a totally different number for us. Fifth large ad company in the world. Our email and Teams self-service has taken off for us. It was reluctant. And one of the things I think that has encouraged that is our workforce has become younger. A lot of people who I started with 32 years here have retired, left. A lot more retiring. We have some retiring, some people leaving today, and they have receptions. And I'll tell you, when we do our metrics, it's email. It started with phone calls, unless it's a 1 or 2, like where a whole floor is down or something, or things like that. It is email. Now we have, it used to be just like our IT folks who used Teams. Now the end users, and we actually had to block them because we couldn't, we didn't have enough staff on the service desk to support them. So they are using self-service, like password resets, account requests. It's so weird. It was a lot of pushback at first, but it's really happening. So I just wonder, like, when you get that percentages and those numbers, like you said, it is different industries you're getting it from. So it depends.
So Sheila, I have a question for you. Is all of your workforce, are they still in the office, or have they transitioned to be remote? And then do they still have physical desk phones?
So I work at the corporate office, FMC Tower. That's the only location in Philadelphia. And we have tried to 3 days, and this is, COVID before we were all way home, 3 days in the office and 2 days home. Most of the people want to be home more days. The organization wants people back. So they compromised and gave us the 2 days. We're trying to get more of us who want to work remote from home or what have you. Only in the plants and places like that, you have to, it's no way you could work home. You're in a plant, but anywhere there's an office, people want to work from home. In the US, because our business has transitioned mainly from the US to international, it varies on the country. Say in Brazil, they've gone back to the office. They haven't, it's not a big workforce of work from home. So there's a push from corporate to have people come back, but the new people, new employees don't want that. And actually, we hired a lot of people, and when they found out that we weren't doing more days work from home, they quit. So we're having a retention issue. We have a big retention issue to the point they're setting up different groups, departments to bring in different groups of people to try to keep them, because they can get them, because they're really good in the market of paying a good salary, great benefits. But once the people get here, that's not very much what's important to them, or the number one thing, having their freedom. They've done a lot of surveys about this as well. So they're really trying to find the balance. And every 6 months, how it's set up right now, they determine, okay, are people being honest? They run the report to see if you're coming into the office and doing what you say you're supposed to do. We're waiting. I'm waiting right now for my June through December, because it's done twice a year. And I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to be in the office 5 days a week. So give me my form so I can, and others, but seriously, so I don't know. It depends, I guess.
You're not alone there. I will say, and I noticed this for me as well, my dynamic changed when I went to working from home full time. Now that coincided with an organization change. It wasn't strictly a COVID thing. But if you don't have a physical desk phone there where I can, press like 2-3 buttons and talk to IT, if I have to go hunt down an 800 number and then dial it into my phone, then it's a little bit different.
Right.
So that can have an impact, just the physicality of it. And also, if you're at home and you're used to communicating with your coworkers over Teams, I think that has an impact really on how we all communicate with everything. I mean, there are things that ordinarily I would say I would probably call someone for, or, in the old days, I'd just walk over to their cubicle, that I now is an instant message. So probably overall, like all of our communication habits are changing some, and I'm glad that it's helped out with your organization in terms of achieving the channel mix that is most productive for you. So that's great.
And you asked me one other thing, if majority of the phones, do we have them on the desk? I have it on the desk. I barely ever touch it. You were when we went to voice over IP, you were asked if you want the soft phone or the desk phone. Because I'm in IT, I got both, but I don't even look at it. I have a phone in my house only because of the package, and most of the people I know do not have home phones. So I'm finally ready to let it go, and I'm falling behind what the others are doing because I never touch it. I actually took it off the hook at home. So you couldn't even get me, and I forgot, and it's underneath something hidden. So, that day I had it because my mother used to say, oh, keep your phone in case of emergency, something happened with these cell phones. You want to be able to plug it in. Well, I don't even have a good phone that works. It's so old, I realize it doesn't work. But the same difference here, I never used this. I've traveled to Denmark around, and every location I went to, I used the soft phone. So I don't know. It's, I see being this large organization that we have started going away from the phones to the email, more to the, and I think it's a force, I'm gonna say this, it's a little forced by employees to be somewhat of a remote environment. And the only way I think we're going to be able to keep good talent if we do that and continue and even find more creative ways, because we've lost a lot of people. They just said, no, it's not that important. And even the surveys they've done recent, people tell you that on there.
Yeah, that's I could talk a lot about that. I mean, it's kind of funny when an organization that is, and I'm not referencing your organization, but just organizations that I see that, you know, they're desperate for talent. They're trying to scale up to address consumer demand or their service demand, and they're implementing these really unpopular policies, and then you know, trying to balance, you know, meeting that demand while they're also kind of working against themselves in terms of the current employee attrition. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting topic. You know, I'm all for remote work, but I also signed up for it before I was forced into it too. So
Okay.
and then Paul, I see that you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
So I got a couple things on this, because you'd asked originally, like, why are people still calling? So I have an anecdote on that. And this is more, I guess, sales and support, but I booked an excursion with a cruise I was on recently, and you're able to book it online, but if you have to cancel it, you have to call them. They won't let you do self-service. So I think for some of these services, they may not be defined, or they may not let you change them, or stuff like that without calling. So it may actually be a product of the service itself, forcing you people to still use phone calls. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. The other thing too, I think with all the stuff, and this is kind of, and I don't know, again, I want to reference my other colleges and school people here, like we actually, and this is a really funny dynamic, is that we actually had a problem with enrollment because the students didn't want to wear masks and they wanted to be on campus and have the campus experience. And we've been promising that, you know, hopefully in the fall, we'll be back to normal. What's funny is the students want to come to campus and have the college experience, but all the employees want to work from home. So how are we going to have a vibrant campus if all the people that work there aren't there?
Student employees, they're cheap.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm saying, though, but I mean, the people, like the campus, they want the employees there as part of the vibrant experience, but the employees don't want to be there. So, but the students want to be there, but they don't want to be home. They don't want to do college from home. They want to go away to college, but the people that are at work don't want to be there. So I think it's just kind of a funny thing. And I don't know if the other colleges are experiencing this too, but I just thought it's funny. The other thing too, and I think the reason why the employees have so much power is everybody keeps forgetting that all the baby boomers retired when COVID hit. Like there was a projection that there was supposed to be a workforce shortage anyway, but it was supposed to be more gradual than this as baby boomers. But a lot of them, I think, just wholesale retired. They didn't wait the other couple of years. They all just quit at the same time. But I think as more people come in to backfill that, and you start getting like 10, 20 people applying for one job again, this whole thing might change a little bit, where the corporations might push back and have people come back in the office a little more, because then you're going to have you're not going to have, like right now, like the employees have carte blanche because there's not enough of them. But I think as you know, as we get more people growing up and then we fill in that gap from all the baby boomers retiring, I think that's when you're going to start to see this maybe right size a little more. It's just that we have to wait until more people enter the workforce in order for, and therefore to be more competition over jobs, in order for this to maybe have some kind of discussion. But I mean, and again, it's really more of a cultural thing. I mean, you know, you go to places like Brazil and everybody's more cultural, like everybody's all about being out and being around people and this, that, and the other. And
the economics are different too.
Yeah, and I think too, what there are some of us that are, I mean, yeah, we're a little bit older, but there's some of us that do miss the work environment. Like, I mean, we worked in college, so it was a good environment. I mean, we would go to happy hour, we go to football games, go to pep rallies and stuff like that, and we miss some of that stuff, some of us. So I think it also depends on the business and the people too. There are some people that are younger, that are your age, that do like to come in. They don't necessarily want to be home 5 days a week all by themselves. So I think while a lot of people want to do it, I don't think it's the majority that everybody wants to do it. I still think there's people that value seeing human beings every day and not just sitting at home by themselves. So
for sure. And also people's, you know, workspace at home. There are some people who, you know, aren't as lucky as I am, that have a dedicated office to work in at home, and they're converting their dining room table every day. And, you know, so it's a hassle and you're in the way. If anyone else is home, then, you know, you feel like you're a bother, because then you have to get everyone else to be quiet.
And then there's the dogs barking, the infamous dogs barking while you're in the middle of a meeting.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And also your observation about the cruise line was very astute. I recently worked for a cruise line, and that sounded somewhat familiar. So yeah, absolutely. There are there are a lot of cases where, you know, we're driving things into the contact center, into our service and support centers for reasons that, you know, maybe we want to try to upsell or talk them out of things, talk them out of canceling or rebooking that. There are a lot of those situations, and they come up. Are there better alternatives? That's you know, I think I could probably think of a couple, but or, you know, especially, you know, maybe change that policy if you know, if you're not meeting the service levels you want to meet, you know, temporarily. But yeah, all great comments, all great ideas there.
But the funny thing, I will say one last thing on this. The problem with making you call in to change your reservation, they don't have enough staff to staff the call center to help you. So you have to wait on hold for over an hour to change the booking, which that's the funny part. So the business is trying to drive sales, but they don't have the support staff to cover what they're trying to do. And that's the funny part.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you know, that one hand not talking to the other is really common. And it's also kind of a challenge for contact centers. I'm going to keep talking about contact centers just because I love you both equally to support centers. But what's interesting is, you know, in IT, when we need something, when we need to make a change to our self-service portal, or when we need to deflect some calls to a website, you know, we'll just go do it. Like, I'm used to, if I need something programmed, like if I need a website built, like, okay, well, I'll go do it if no one else is going to do it. Contact centers are different in that way, because they don't have, you know, their background isn't as technical. So they rely on others to make all these changes for them. And what you'll see a lot of times is, you know, the one group has this grand plan to shift all this traffic over here, and whoever was supposed to be handling this other resource, you know, has not done it to the expectations that were set by the first group. So that's definitely a challenge. And that's kind of like the, you know, finance strategy or marketing strategy saying, hey, like, let's make people call in to rebook these or to cancel them, so that we can upsell, so that we can, you know, direct them to another product, make sure that we don't lose that revenue. But then it not only being like a bad experience, but you know, you're not in the mood to spend more after, you know, or during that bad experience there. Sheila?
Oh, I thought I was unmuted. Andrew, one of the things, this has nothing to do with the company I work for, that I was very surprised to see this change in this type of self-service in medical. My son had a doctor appointment, had a physical. He was saying his chest was hurting. They did an EKG and they referred him to a cardiologist. He was busy, so he asked me to make the appointment. I called. I did not pay attention to the menu because I said they didn't pick up. I called back, left a message for appointment. I called back yesterday because I'm like, that doesn't make sense. A cardiologist, they wouldn't call you back. I listened good to the menu, and there was nothing that wanted you to immediately speak to anyone. If you wanted an appointment or this or that, unless it was urgent, like someone really, you know, really bad situation or one, you had to text. I've never seen a doctor's office say text. So I was surprised. They told you the number to text, you text that number. As soon as I text, answered. Now for 3 days, I was waiting for someone to call me back. So I'm saying for the medical to start transitioning to this, that's really different. And they answered me. And then after I was saying something else, they asked me, I realized it was a bot. And because it was a delayed reaction, I said, hello, are you there? And then they asked my son's name, all that. And they went in and scheduled this appointment. got me a good convenient time, said, I said, well, I called and left a message, because here I'm thinking I'm talking to the office or someone. And I said, I left a message and no one called me. Sheila, we're sorry that no one called you back. We apologize for that. But I was in the wrong because I didn't listen to the menu. It told me to text and I left a message. And then they got it done.
And there's some, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I was just surprised about that.
So if we have time, I didn't originally plan to include it in this, but if we have time later, y'all asked me to play the Intuit TurboTax call for you. I was pretty impressed with this, and it's actually very similar to something I'm working on. I was just impressed with the voice recognition. I was impressed with kind of the call flow that they had designed for that. I think it's a good example. It's also a good example of ways that it can still be improved too. All right. Well, I want to keep us moving because we are getting a little bit behind just time-wise here, and I want to make sure that we get through everything for you. But really great conversation, so I'm glad that we had it there. I want to just kind of quickly touch base on the what and the why for some of this self-service movement, because you're going to hear me use some of these terms. And they're not necessarily inherent to IT, so I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. When I say deflect, when we're talking about deflection, it's usually used in the context of an IVR, like when you're calling in and listening to those menus. That's just referring to I'm trying to lure the customer away. I'm trying to bribe them to go to a different channel than the one that they're currently in. So in Sheila's case, they deflected her call to SMS. In a lot of cases, you'll hear about deflection, messaging on hold saying, go to our website and check out our self-help. Containment is referring to solving the issue and resolving it within the platform before you get to an agent. So in chat, we may have a bot that contains the interaction. It stays within that same channel before that interaction gets to a human. In the IVR, that would be an example of taking an appointment and making that through the actual voice application before we get to a person. And then something that I noticed, that in fact, it was the cruise line that I noticed it with, that I was working with. And I never had this on my list of things we can do with an interaction before. And also, I don't have it up here, but obviously we can handle interactions as well. So we can handle, deflect, contain. And then this is a new one I added during COVID times, is defer. A lot of organizations, for just the uncertainty in what was going to be happening in 3-6 months back in 2020, had to defer and had to, if you were an airline, which I also worked for during some of that time, you don't know what the next 6 months is going to be. I mean, we're rebooking you to this. We don't know if it's going to fly. We don't know if these borders are going to be open. We don't know if there's going to be mask requirements or vax requirements or anything else. Call us back in 3 months when maybe we have an idea. We don't know if we're going to issue refunds. There are a lot of reasons that COVID brought up and kind of pointed out to me that we have to defer. In the case of the cruise line, many of the cruise lines actually have a very long kind of sales cycle from when you book your trip and potentially payment is due for your trip before they actually start delivering any of the service you paid for to them. So that's an interesting thing to think about. But particularly in IT, we also have a lot of situations where there's a new hire and they need permissions provisioned for the shared drive or something like that, or they need a phone deployed, or they need a laptop mailed to them. But those may be examples of contacts that we have to defer until a later time because they're not resolvable now. We're waiting on HR, we're waiting on paperwork, we're waiting on the supply chain, lots of different reasons that we may have to defer things. So I thought that was kind of neat when I thought about it. It's like, yeah, this really does fit well with IT service and support. And then obviously we're doing these things. Ultimately, I think everyone does genuinely want to improve service and be accessible, but there are also a lot of kind of hard realities why we have to do these things, like controlling our costs and the availability of labor and engagement that kind of drives that availability of labor. At first level, it gets boring answering the same question over and over. And the more we can deflect those easy, boring, mundane things to a channel that doesn't tie up, our people at first level, that frees them up to do more exciting things that feel more impactful, that make their day more interesting. And that's really important in a job as well. And so I also want to kind of point out that, the toolbox, we have a lot of different options in terms of how we can deploy some type of self-service. It can be online, it can be in the phone, it can be in, the SMS channel, it can be through our onboarding processes. It's not even necessarily technology. But your toolbox isn't always the problem. I'm not going to say it's never the problem, but I will say usually when someone thinks that the toolbox, the technologies, the tools, the resources that they have available are the reason that self-service isn't being adopted, in my experience, usually it's not. It's the people that really have toolbox problems are the ones that are like handwriting out knowledge articles on Post-its and delivering 30,000 of them to the desk. Those people have toolbox problems. But generally, if you have pretty standard technology, it generally isn't a tools problem that is causing the adoption. Now, yes, there's some UX issues that can definitely be frustrating, but I don't think that's really at the core. So what is it? Well, it's the kind of the last thing that it could be. It's the customer. It's a customer problem. We spend a lot of time focusing on the things that are controllable for us, but at a certain point, it has to be. It takes two to tango, and we've been tangoing. But sometimes it's the other end. Sometimes it's our customers that are not compatible with the service that we want them to deliver. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go out and replace them all, although it sounds like some of that turnover may be happening in some of your organizations. But I want to point out it's okay. But as we acknowledge this, even if it's something we can't control, we can try to design for it. And that's really what I wanted you to take away from the session today, is that, there's more to our self-service and the adoption than just technology and just how we promote it. It's more than just awareness, but there are some specific things we can think about in terms of just how humans work that impact how likely they are to adopt and try these different channels. As we understand, once we identify that as a challenge or a constraint or a design criteria, then we can implement our solutions a little bit more strategically in order to resolve these, resolve some of the issues that may be keeping customers away from the additional services and channels that we'd like them to try out. So I want to talk about a couple of reasons why customers don't and why they're not going to self-serve. So we'll go through these, pretty quick. You're probably going to say like that it's all going to make sense to you when you hear it. And you'll, as I go through this, start thinking in kind of the ways that maybe you as a customer could, what would satisfy you in these situations. So one of them, and I find this to be a big one, is the perceived complexity of the issue. And what I mean by that is that if a customer perceives that their issue is too new, like if it's something that they've never heard of before, they may not go to self-service because it's such a strange thing, or they think that their situation's so unique that there's not going to be a resource available for them. You know, if you think about all the things that could happen to you on the way to an airport that would cause you to miss your flight, you may think like, I'm just having the worst day and lightning struck and it was crazy. But if you call into an airline contact center, they've probably heard that. They've probably heard that like 17 times today. There's such a large customer base that, you know, they run into these things and they have a plan to deal with it. And if you think about, you know, your customer's shoes, there are probably things that are completely foreign and they never would have guessed that this ever, you know, could have happened, that, you know, however something malfunctioned, or, you know, just pick an incident. But other than, you know, the typical password reset, but some people may perceive that their situation is too unique. And then the other thing that kind of goes along with that, and this, I saw it a lot during COVID, was the problem is standard, but I have extraneous circumstances that I should get a policy exception for. And that's one that came up a lot for a lot of my clients, particularly in travel and hospitality, with cancellations and determining how refunds and vouchers and things were going to be issued and what all the terms were going to be surrounding those. You know, everyone thinks that their situation is special and unique. And because of a history in a lot of cases of having been granted exceptions and having really good customer service, especially as you get to the upper market and luxury brands, it is very common to bend the rules a little bit, to try to personalize solutions. And so the blanket answer isn't going to satisfy that type of customer. And therefore they perceive self-service isn't going to help them because it's going to give them an answer they're not going to like. So that, you know, that's two different kind of ways that you could interpret this one. But both of those really matter to, you know, it doesn't matter if customers adopt self-service. It doesn't matter if they go there, if they're not going to stop there when they get the correct answer, if it's a correct answer that they disagree with. There are times where the policy exceptions are warranted, but there are also a lot of times that we don't want them to continue pursuing and escalating. I'll give you an example that's not kind of like a win-lose situation. But I was designing an IVR for a friend's hair salon, long story. But I was doing a little pro bono work for him and threw together an IVR in Twilio. And as I was in the design process, you know, I was thinking of what are all the different things that we need to anticipate. And in a situation where, let's say that in a restaurant kind of situation, and it's a holiday and you're, you know, if you go to Google Maps and you want to check the hours, of course it lists the hours. It tells you like the business updated them 4 days ago. And then it has that little disclaimer text underneath, like whatever holiday may affect these hours. Can you imagine how many calls they get that day, specifically asking like, are y'all open? And even if you have a recording that says, you know, we're open Monday through Friday from, you know, 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. Unless you specifically mention today's a holiday and we're still open, then that's not going to satisfy that need or that concern. So that's a kind of an example that's not just a win-lose, but if we're not targeting and being personalized in our response, then it will cause, it leaves room for doubt. It doesn't satisfy the complete psychological need to be reassured there. It doesn't remove the ambiguity for it. So another thing that, that happens is prior bad experiences, and this can be with any provider. Our customers' expectations are set by every good and bad expectations, and expectations in terms of the service that they're going to demand, and expectations in the quality that they expect, whether it's good or bad. It's set by any provider in any industry. This is one of the reasons that there's a particular survey question I used back when I was with WKU and redesigning our incident surveys to try to tap into how are we comparing to all of the other service providers? Because at the end of the day, if Google can text me an answer to my question, or can text me a password reset code, or something, people expect that from us. Our customers often, particularly in IT, they have a much grander idea of the technology that we have access to. Funny little side comment, like apparently I sound a little bit like a robot on the phone. And I would have people when I first pick up, like, ask me, are you a real person? It's like, okay, first of all, yes. Second of all, I wish that our technology and text to speech was that good. But these expectations, if they had a poor self-service experience in a similar context, like they had tried to resolve a consumer products issue by going to a knowledge base or with a chatbot, that impacts their likelihood to use our chatbots, because that's training them in terms of what to expect from this technology. And that can be very difficult because, as I was saying earlier, in my some of my IVR work right now, I'll give you an example. One of my prompts right now says, you can talk to me just like a human. How can I help you today? And people will still say, appointment. And that, that's because they expect that the machine is too dumb to understand them. And so they're not giving me the rich level of detail that I would like. Now, there are plenty that even without that prompt will, if you say, how can I help you today? They will answer in just a normal sentence, letting, the conversational IVR do its thing. But those are just some things to kind of keep in mind. And then there's also specific awareness that impacts our customers' ability or willingness to try these alternate channels to use self-help resources. They may know that the resource is there, but they may not know that its depth and the breadth of issues that it can cover. They may think, oh, well, I thought that was just for password resets, or I just thought that was for Microsoft Office issues. I didn't know it had this category. So that can limit, folks' willingness to engage with those, with these channels that we have available. As we're thinking of deflection, maybe your messaging on hold is trying to push people to an online resource. But if I don't perceive that resource is good for all issues, because I heard it talk about something about restarting my router, then I'm not going to pursue that, and I'm not going to take that bait to get out of the voice channel. And then also a lot of times, and I think that we as service providers tend to talk in this language because it's like, we know at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're going for. But think about, as self-service is presented, in a lot of cases, it's presented as kind of like an exclusive thing. You're either going to self-serve and you're going to resolve your issue through the self-service channel, or you're going to talk to a human. Ideally, in our ideal world, that's what we want, right? But it's not presented as something that you're going to do the self-service and that's going to help you have a conversation with the human. We usually don't like market it that way, and even I often don't talk about it that way. But this can give the idea that this is predisposed to be one or the other, and that means that this one, if it doesn't work, is delaying me getting through to the channel that actually is going to work. So that is so what I'd like to say there is, we should think about and try to speak about our self-service channels as something you can do. And we'll talk about this in a second, hopefully. But it's something that you can do that builds some continuity. And it's an and. You can self-serve, and that's going to facilitate your further conversation. It's not just something that you have to make a choice of either delaying, a resolution to try this, but it's something that we should really build and try to think about as how can it help, and then also market, how can it help that conversation when we get to an agent. And I do want to pause for just a second because we had a little conversation earlier. We are just a smidge behind, but am I still good to go on for a few more minutes?
Yes, we're good.
Good. Okay, cool. Wonderful. Okay, and then this last one, and I think this is even one of the most important and most impactful of all of these 5, is just the adrenaline that comes from having an issue that is of serious importance, or of serious impact or inconvenience. I hate to even say inconvenience, but if you think about the types of the kind of downstream impacts of some of the incidents that we may have to deal with, there may be customers yelling at this person because because their system didn't work, or because their receipt jammed, or maybe someone has a very high pressure boss that really wanted these reports, and they were supposed to be here at 8 a.m., but the printer didn't print. What printers always do is they don't print right when you need them. And that causes, and HDI actually trains for this in their support center analyst training. It's one of the best takeaways I think that you can get from that particular training. But the reaction that people have when they're in some of these situations, when they have this stress response, it's adrenaline. It's the fight or flight response. I mean, you could have punched them in the face and gotten the exact same outcome as some of these incidents in which they are very concerned or very emotionally impacted by it. And that creates something called an emotional hijack. And when they have this adrenaline dump, they're not thinking rationally. One of the reasons that customers aren't going to go to self-service, especially not seek it out when they have a really serious need for it, and when it would probably be the most helpful, is because they're not thinking rationally. They are in fight or flight mode. Their pulse is racing, and they're really spun up, and that impacts what they're going to do in terms of their decision-making abilities. They're going to go to whatever they know. They're going to choose the familiar option, and until another option becomes familiar and certain to them, they won't be able to make a conscious choice there. And this is where I wanted to circle back on what I said earlier about the focus groups. Is we are designing and developing and testing all of our self-service technology in an environment where we have no skin in the game. We're not, well, maybe with KCS, you could say if you're creating your own article, okay, I had this problem and I was really irritated about it, and then I wrote this article. I've definitely done that. You know, in a lot of cases, when we're reviewing whether or not this website works, we're not under stress. We don't have, you know, a boss yelling at us because the printer won't print. We don't have customers staring us down. You know, while we're trying to like troubleshoot a credit card payment terminal or something in a retail store. We're not a contact center agent that has a customer on hold that's, you know, going on 12 minutes now because the computer's loading slowly. We're chilling in our office. We're having nice, fun meetings about self-service. And, you know, we don't have that same pressure that our customer is going to be under when we expect them to use these systems. So while I'm not saying that we should, get ourselves worked up into this in order, you know, for testing purposes, it is something we should keep in mind of what their kind of emotional state and their ability to think rationally is at the time that we expect them to use this. If I hope I can squeeze in one more quick story, but I had a client actually quite a while ago now. They were insistent that they were actually a technology client. They were a SaaS company, and they were very insistent they did not want to offer telephone support. They had some prior bad experiences just in terms of like how costs were running away on them. And so it was a non-starter with them. But they knew that they were losing customers because they didn't have phone support. They knew it was the single biggest pain point in the entire thing. Like, you talk to anyone in this company, and I interviewed them from all over. And number one thing is, you know, what's wrong with our support? We don't have a phone number that you can call. You have to go online, you have to log a ticket, and then we'll call you back maybe if we feel like it. Everyone, sales, marketing, accounting knew this, like the C-suite knew this. But what the opposition I got from the executive who was most opposed to introducing some type of telephone support or some type of synchronous, like live human support, you know, was that, well, it's never an issue, you know, when we sell it. And sales kind of told me this too. It's like, we can always overcome these objections. But what you have to keep in mind when you're overcoming objections during the sales conversation is that the customer's business isn't shut down right now because your software is not working. When it becomes an issue and the criteria change when we have that important pressing you know, situation. So yes, even if we're still able to sell, the reason that you're having this attrition after, you know, one, you know, moderately severe incident is because the customer is reevaluated now that they have that emotional context. Now that they know what it feels like when their business isn't moving because the product had a glitch, you know, their answer has changed. And it's a lot different situation than what you're going to have in a calm, nice sales conversation. So that context is important, and we have to keep that in mind as we're kind of designing our self-service. Well, I don't want to keep us over too long. There was one more section that I was going to go through that kind of talks about why customers choose high-cost, high-touch channels. However, I was already going to package up another a piece of this as a supplement, as a little ebook for you all. So what I can do is I will wrap this up into that if you'd like. And then if you're interested in sending that to you, then we can get that out. I don't know if maybe one of the chapter leaders would like to just send that to an email list, or if you would like to drop your emails in chat, I'd be happy to send that. But the reasons why customers choose high cost channels are kind of following along some of these same lines here. And that, excellent, perfect. So if we, I'll circle back and we'll get this emailed out. I don't want to hold you all too late. I know I'm already a little bit over. But do we have any questions about the first part of the presentation here? Or any conversation, any ideas? Did any of this hit close to home for you?
Yeah, I would say, Andrew, it definitely did, because I'm in a little bit of a different position than some of the folks, because I am not working directly with a customer base of mine, but I actually handle several clients that do. So this is definitely a concern with everybody. And I know Colleen actually wrote something about how they have similar concerns despite all their efforts. So I definitely appreciate your presentation. It definitely gave me some ideas to go back to my customers with, and ultimately to go back to my own company when we struggle internally. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I will get these additional resources. It'll be a fun, quick read through. I'll get these packaged up and we can have those out. Looks like Colleen will send that out. Thank you, Colleen. And then I'll also, for Sheila and Jennifer, I'll grab your emails. I'll CC you on that as well.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Yes, as Paul said, this is something that we've been struggling with. Some of our efforts have focused on the self-serve aspect with our knowledge base, as well as trying to get adoption of those, getting those tickets in sort of the portal ticket, as opposed to every other method that they're calling us. Our culture is definitely pick up the phone and call. But, you know, there's all of, you know, as lots of things that you talked about, there's other challenges along with that. So we've had lots of efforts, very slow adoption, and I'm happy to be able to take back some of the things that you offered today.
Fantastic. Colleen, I'm not sure that I remember what industry are you in, or what type of organization you work for?
So I work for, we're a Bayada Home Healthcare. So we're a home care agency. Okay. So it is definitely, and at this point we are supporting both our office staff and the field clinicians. So for lots of them, it's just much easier to pick up the phone. Where we struggle though is we end up with voicemail. So then it's calling people back, and how much time and cost goes into all of that. So that's where we would definitely like to move things more over to that self-service, of course, and also getting those offline tickets in so that we can manage them a little better.
Yeah, any situation where, you know, where our internal customers are in front of a customer or a patient that is waiting on them, or especially if there's, you know, any serious like health impact, you know, that's not the time to be doing a live chat. That's not the, you know, depending on the priority or severity of the issue, you know, it is not a convenient time to do troubleshooting even sometimes. There are some situations where we just need things fixed quick. And, you know, I think that there's a fair business case in some instances that, you know, that should be the goal. But balancing that and getting the right incident to the right place is challenging. One thing that I have found helps, and it may not necessarily apply in your case, Colleen, but in contact centers, a lot of times, you know, it's a big deal to be off the phone, to be in standby. It really does impact service levels. As you know, anyone who manages a service desk knows, the power of one makes a big difference in your service level performance. But internally, usually what you know, what I see is like a disconnect between the IT service management process and kind of the contact center's internal incident resolution process. And usually there's some duplication of work, and there's kind of shadow IT service and support going on. And that there are, I think, often opportunities with some of these frontline teams that, you know, if IT support was to more closely coordinate and kind of reach out with the frontline managers, figure out what they're doing. You know, there's probably incidents that are going unlogged because we resolved it once and they're maintaining their own knowledge base internally. They may have their own self-help resources internally that, you know, are not contributing anything back to us, for one, and also that information can be obsolete. It may be workarounds that we need to be applying permanent fixes to. So in those kind of situations, especially with the frontline, I always recommend, you know, have some good, long, hard conversations with those frontline managers and figure out kind of what their process is. There's probably a lot that they're resolving that we don't even know about in IT support. And there are probably a lot of opportunities where we could work better together in terms of, you know, actually like just logging incidents so we know how big of an issue like this problem is, in terms of applying, you know, making sure they're using our knowledge, approved knowledge, so that when issues are, you know, when our workaround is transformed into a permanent fix, that those are getting applied, that tickets are getting logged for that. So, and it, you know, helps prioritize and everything too, on the IT side.
Great, thank you. Any other last comments or questions for Andrew? Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for taking the time with us today. Great presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you all so much for having me. If you have any other thoughts or questions, comments, concerns, or just want to talk about, you know, why customers choose high touch channels or why they're not adopting self-service, feel free to read, or any of the other things that, you know, was a tangent that we didn't have time for today. Feel free to tempt me into that tangent by email or LinkedIn or Twitter. Always happy to have the conversation. Thank you all so much for having me. And next time I will be there in person.
Okay, just a few more things as we wrap up the afternoon. Let's get the screen shared again. Okay, so hopefully you can see our schedule for the rest of the year. We're hoping for potentially a summer social in person sometime in June. We will have our July meeting right now looking like virtual, possibility of being in person. We'll keep everyone posted on that. August, we hope to still have our baseball game at Trenton Thunder, followed by our September 14th meeting that we are really hoping will be in person. We're working on some local speakers so that we can resume our in-person activities. And then the last couple, we will have our golf outing in October. Many of you may remember we were able to do that in person last year since it is a completely outside event. And then lastly, we have our annual leadership conference in December. That's typically in the King of Prussia area. And again, we are aiming to have that in person. We'll keep everyone updated if any of those dates or locations change. So last thing to finish up the afternoon, we have Chris Saccone. He's going to help with our prize drawing.
Hey everybody,
we have 225 Amazon cards up for grabs.
Hey everybody, I'm going to do a quick little screen share here. Oh,
give me 1 second to stop sharing.
Okay. All right, so yeah, I know that there are a good amount of people that have dropped since the meeting did start. So there might be some pleasantly surprised folks that may have dropped that do some quick few shuffles here and then give it a whirl. The first $25 Amazon gift card would go to Corey Hearn. Congrats, Corey. I'm sure they'll be pleasantly surprised as well. And then the second Amazon gift card goes to Keith McMenamin. So congrats to Corey and Keith. And yeah, so Colleen, I can get the emails over to you as soon as we are off here. So, oh, sorry about that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Stop the screen share. There we go.
Okay, so that's a wrap for this afternoon. So thank you everyone who joined us. We were able to finish just a few minutes ahead of schedule. So hopefully you get to have a break before you get back to your regular daily activities. So thank you again for taking the time, and we will see everyone in July.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.